Story 2. Home, Sweet Home.
Sharon, my little sister screamed. Sharon! It always makes Alice nuts when I fool around with her dollhouse. That's why I keep doing it. I just can't resist. It's bad enough to be 12 and still sharing a room with my little sister, but that dollhouse takes up way too much space. Alice is always playing with it. She has a family of dolls that are the exact right size for the tiny furniture. They even have names. Shauna and Bill, the mum and dad dolls, and Timmy and Tony, the kids. They all have plastic hair. Sharon! I strolled down the hall to our room. Alice knelt in front of the dollhouse, putting everything back the way it had been. You called? I asked. She glared at me over her shoulder. You changed the furniture all around. So? And you stuck Shauna upside down in the sink. Give me a break, Alice. Shauna is a doll, and in case you hadn't noticed, that's a fake sink. It's not like anything's going to mess up her hair or anything. You are so mean. I made a face. Get a life. Normal 9-year-olds don't spend their time playing with stupid dollhouses. It isn't stupid, she shouted. Is so? She stuck out her bottom lip and pouted. I felt bad. Well, a little bit anyway. Look, I'm sorry, okay? I muttered. I flopped down on my bed. Alice didn't say anything for a while. Then she set the roof back on the dollhouse and stood up. Sharon? Yeah? Want to ride over to the garage sale with me? Don't you have any friends? I asked. None of them can go. Besides, it's on East Bay Street and none of us are allowed to go that far by ourselves. Please? She begged. I don't know why I agreed to go. I really don't. Maybe because I felt guilty for messing up her dollhouse. Whatever. A few minutes later, we hopped on our bikes and headed out. We turned onto East Bay Street. Alice stopped in front of a big old house set way back from the road. I spotted the name on the mailbox. Hey, this is Mrs. Forster's place, I cried. Uh-huh. I glanced up at the house. A curtain twitched, and I had the feeling that someone was peeking out at us. Mrs. Forster is really strange, I told Alice. At least that's what I've heard. Some kids told me she has weird powers. They say she can change herself into animals. No way, exclaimed Alice. I saw her one time, I insisted. She's totally scary. She's got big black eyes that glare right through you. Her hair is as black as her eyes, with a streak of white right down the middle that looks like a lightning bolt. Alice stuck her tongue out at me. What's the matter, Sharon? Are you scared? That got me. Of course I'm not scared. So, come on then. She started pedaling up the long gravel driveway. I followed slowly. I didn't want to be there. Mrs. Forster did scare me, but no way was I going to look lame in front of my little sister. Alice stopped in front of the garage. 2 long tables had been set up to hold the stuff Mrs. Forster wanted to sell, but nobody else was there. Not even to take the money. How come no one is around? I asked. Alice shrugged. Maybe she's gone to lunch or something. I turned to stare at the house. The windows seemed to stare back like black, rectangular eyes. I guess we'd better go. Not yet. Alice pointed towards the nearest table. There's a sign. It says, leave payment on the table. That's too weird, I muttered. Well, I'm going to look, Alice replied. She dove in. I mean, this stuff was heaven for Alice. And I knew exactly what she was looking for. You don't really think that Mrs. Forster is going to have dollhouse furniture, do you? I teased. Even if she doesn't, maybe she's selling some lace or something I can use to make curtains. She's got some really old stuff here. And hey, Alice cried, look. She picked up a tiny object from the table and held it up. It's a little doll lamp. Let's see. I ran my finger along the shade. It felt cool and grainy, like a frog skin. A shiver went up my spine. Yuck, I exclaimed. It's perfect for my living room, Alice protested, and she only wants $2 for it. Exactly what I brought. She set the money on the table and tucked the lamp into her pocket. Aren't you going to buy anything? No way. I didn't want anything that creepy woman owned, and I didn't want Alice to know how frightened I was, so I started poking through the pile of stuff on the far table. A big china bowl caught my eye. I thought it was kind of pretty, so I picked it up. "Be careful with that," Alice warned. A huge, hairy spider crawled over the rim of the bowl. It scuttled over my hand. I screamed and flung the bowl away from me. It shattered into 1,000 tiny pieces across the concrete. "Sharon, look what you did," Alice gasped. "I hate spiders," I cried. "Hate them, hate them, hate them." I gazed up at the house. A woman stood at one of the upstairs windows, staring down at me. I could see the stripe of pale hair glinting in the sunlight. Mrs. Forster. I panicked. I totally panicked. "Let's get out of here," I cried. We grabbed our bikes and rode like crazy down the drive. I glanced over my shoulder. Mrs. Forrester remained at the window, glaring at me with her round, black eyes. We didn't stop until we reached home. Alice ran upstairs with the lamp. I guess she forgot all about Miss Forrester once she returned to her weird little dollhouse world. But I didn't. That night, I dreamed about the old woman. In the dream, she knew me. She talked to me. "You broke my bowl," she whispered in a harsh, raspy voice. "And you didn't pay for it, but you will pay, Sharon. I promise. Now you are my problem, and I always take care of my problems." She leaned over me. Her hair fell down and tickled my face. I opened my eyes and found myself staring at the biggest, ugliest spider I'd ever seen. It dangled from the ceiling on a long white strand. As it swiveled to stare down at me, I saw a white stripe down its back. It tickled my face with its hairy front legs. "Mom!" I screamed. "Dad, help!" A few seconds later, Mum and Dad came running in. I scrambled out of bed and flung myself at them. "It's a spider!" I shrieked. "A big, hairy spider right on my pillow!" Mum clicked on the light, but no spider. No spiders anywhere in the room. Only Alice sitting up in her bed, her mouth wide open in surprise. Dad checked under the covers and all around the bed. I kept watching for it to scuttle across the carpet, but no, there was no sign of it. "It was right here," I insisted. "It talked to me." Alice giggled. "Wow, are you messed up, Sharon? A talking spider?" I forced a laugh too. It was really silly, wasn't it? The next day, I rode my bike over to a friend's house. I stayed longer than I meant to. When I realised how late it was, I jumped on my bike and raced home. By the time I reached our neighbourhood, trees cast long shadows across the ground. One more block and I'd be home. I checked for traffic, then started across the road. "Huh?" I cried out as a car roared out of nowhere. I froze, stared into the bright headlights. Then I swerved so hard, my bike nearly flipped over. Tyres squealed. I could feel a breeze as the car sped past me. My legs started to shake, so I got off my bike and sat down on the curb. Wow, that was a close one. I couldn't understand where the car had come from. I'd looked both ways. A faint scrabbling sound floated up from the dark storm sewer beside me. I peered into the dark opening. I couldn't see anything at first. Then something moved in the darkness, something small and quick. My heart began to pound. A big, hairy spider clambered out of the sewer onto the curb. It had a pale stripe down its back. I leaped up and ran back down the block and into my house. It took me a while to get my breath back. This didn't make any sense. Where were all the spiders coming from? I didn't know the answer, but I did know one thing. I hadn't been dreaming last night. I kept picturing that pale stripe down the spider's back. I shuddered. I suddenly felt so afraid I didn't even want to go back out to get my bike. After dinner, I headed upstairs to do my homework. Alice had dragged the dollhouse out into the middle of the room. Tiny chairs and tables, beds and bathtubs littered the floor. "Hey," I protested, "you're trashing my side of the room. I can't even get to my desk to do my homework." "So, do it on your bed," Alice shot back. I started to my bed, heard a crunch. Oh, I gazed down and saw that I stepped on one of the dolls, Shauna. Her hand had broken off. Alice instantly burst into tears. "Look what you did," she wailed. "It was an accident," I cried. "I didn't mean to." "You did. You hate my dollhouse and you hate Shauna. That's why you always stick her head in the sink and that's why you stepped on her." Sobbing, she grabbed the broken doll and ran out of the room. With a sigh, I flopped down onto the bed. Stupid dollhouse. I glanced up. My breath stopped. No, the spider with the white stripe. It clung to the ceiling with its thick, hairy legs. If it let go, it would land on my face. I shrieked and rolled off the bed. When I glanced up, the spider was gone. For the next couple of days, Alice wouldn't even talk to me. She walked past me as if I were invisible. Just before dinner on Friday, I caught up with her in the hall. Alice, listen, I pleaded. I'm sorry about Shauna. I didn't mean to step on her. I really didn't. She stared at me for a moment. It's okay. Dad fixed her hand. I felt better, but I just couldn't keep from teasing her. I promise I won't put Shauna's head in the sink again, I offered. You won't? No, I'll work on Bill for a change. She stuck her tongue out at me. Then she spun around and headed for the dining room, probably to tell on me. So I started after her, but then I heard the sound of glass tinkling above me and gazed up at the chandelier. Its glass prisms quivered, sending rainbows shooting around the room. It happened every time a breeze blew in from the front window. Except the window was closed. The tinkling of glass grew louder. The prisms shook wildly. Before I could move out from under it, the chandelier broke away from the ceiling. I dove to the wall. The chandelier crashed to the floor beside me. I shrieked, stared down at it. Stared down at the spider. You tried to kill me? I shouted at it. I know who you are. I know what you're trying to do. I spun away. I had to get out of there, away from the vicious old woman and her spider body. I took 3 steps and felt something drop heavily into my hair. My eyes moved to the hall mirror. I saw it. I saw the spider in my hair. I felt its hot breath on the back of my neck. I felt its hairy legs slide through my hair and over my scalp. No! With a cry of horror, I pulled at it with both hands, but it clung tightly to my hair. Clung so tight, so tight. I screamed again. Couldn't anyone hear me? I ran into my room. Alice, help! Help me! She wasn't there. And then I felt the spider legs, the points, the sharp points digging into my scalp, digging into my head, into my brain. No! Over my scream, I heard dry laughter. You are a tiny problem, the spider rasped, so close to my ear. The pain shot through my head, through my whole body. You are a tiny, tiny problem. Was the spider growing bigger? I felt its hot, spongy body press against my back. Was it bigger now? No, it wasn't bigger. I was smaller. I was shrinking fast. Standing in the shadow of the hideous spider that still clung to me, still drilled its forearms into my scalp. I have my revenge, the old woman's spider voice rasped in my ear. You are a tiny problem now. No! With another cry of horror, I broke free and ran into the dollhouse, hid inside the dollhouse. I was as tiny as a doll. I could hide there. I could be safe. My life now? It isn't actually as bad as it sounds. Alice has fixed up the dollhouse really nice. I'm comfortable inside it. My room is really great. She even put in a little colour TV. I feel very safe and protected. I just have one big problem. Alice. Here she comes now. Hey, put me down. I mean it, Alice. Put me down. Why does she think it's so funny to stick my head in the sink?
Probably... Another story down from Even More Tales to give you goosebumps. I hope you've been enjoying them so far. Please don't hesitate to hit like, hit subscribe, keep up to date with the stories coming out, and don't forget that I have read a whole bunch of different Goosebumps stories right here on the channel. So go back and check out the rest of them because they're all just as good.